So far we have discussed about the distortion that the channel has introduced. Linear distortion, amplitude and phase imbalance, and nonlinear distortion which cannot be represented by transfer function of the channel, but we need something like transfer characteristics. Then we can expand the transfer characteristics in terms of some series of polynomial, then analyze the signal, received output signal in the frequency domain. We found that there were certain problems associated with nonlinear distortion, like for example, we have higher order harmonics coming into picture. One of the characteristics is second order harmonic distortion, third order harmonic distortion, intermodulation distortion, intermodulation products, crosstalk, which arises even though those signals are from different disjoint frequency bands, they overlap with each other and create, therefore thereby creating crosstalk. So we'll discuss about some of the methodologies, practical methodologies which are used to cure or address such distortions. So for a case of linear distortion, for example, if xt is the signal which has been transmitted, passes through a channel, channel distorts the signal. As you have seen, the square wave getting distorted very badly. We have in the receiver, the very first step of the receiver is an antenna and then a filter. That filter is sometimes known as an equalizer filter. What it does is, and finally we have the output yt, which is used for demodulation, decoding, and so on and so forth. The channel and the equalizer combined together provides a distortionless transmission scenario. As if the original signal xt was transmitted, yt would be proportional to xt, axt, with a delay, so axt minus td. So if channel has a transfer function of hf, equalizer would be not exactly 1 over hf, would be 1 over hf multiplied by e power minus j omega td, such that the product of them, hf 1 over hf cancels and we have e power minus j omega td, so there is a delay. So again, now things which come into picture is whatever you have studied in network synthesis, how to design this equalizer filter, the poles, zeros, stability, all the concepts of network theory comes into picture. Fine. For a digital communication, what do we have? This signal, whenever it is received here, it's converted by an analog to digital converter. We go to digital domain. We design this equalizer as a digital filter. So when you will take this DSP class, digital signal processing class, you'll see there are assignments related to design of this equalizer, digital filter equalizer. If the channel is time varying, so this filter coefficients also has to be varying in time, adapting to the requirements of the channel. So this adapting to the requirements of the channel gives rise to something known as adaptive equalizer. So there are courses like, for example, adaptive signal processing in our department, which actually kind of provides the layout of these algorithms, LMS, least mean square, NLMS, and various gradient, stochastic gradient descent, various kinds of algorithms, such that one can design an adaptive equalizer which adapts to the channel characteristics. So in practice, if digital communication is used, you do digitization, you do equalization in the digital domain. For high frequency, where it's not possible directly to sample the analog signal, or where there is criteria or restriction for using A to D or so on and so forth, you design equalizer in the analog domain itself in the very beginning when you receive a signal. Fine. So this is one of the solutions for handling linear distortion. Coming to nonlinear distortion, it's a challenge. XT. So we do something like a pre-distorted signal. So this technique is known as pre-distortion and post-compensation. So XT is passed through a system known as compressor. We'll see what it does. Then the compressed signal, pre-distorted signal, passes through a nonlinear distortion in channel, passes through a channel which introduces nonlinear distortion due to the presence of, these nonlinear elements like transistors, diodes, and other things. When it is received in the receiver, it passes through just the inverse process of compressor. That means post distortion correction. So this is signal is intentionally distorted here, pre distortion, passes through a channel, signal is corrected, post distorted, post processing of the distorted signal, which we say expander. And finally you have the output YT, which is used for demodulation and so on. So this compressor and expander, this two, one in the transmitter, one in the receiver, this is known as, you use COM from here and you use PAND. So you use this two combined together, it's known as companding system, compressor and expander together. So this is known as companding system. These are used for handling nonlinear distortion, very effective. So you have two nonlinear blocks. See, nonlinear distortion cannot be corrected by using adaptive equalizer or equalizer in the analog domain. You cannot use a linear system to correct a nonlinear distortion. You have to use two nonlinear blocks to correct this thing. Fine. So what a compressor does? A compressor is a nonlinear signal processor which has greater amplification at the lower signal levels than at the higher signal levels. So original signal had a dynamic range, but after compression, because it provides greater amplification of the lower signal levels, lesser amplification of the higher signal levels, so it compresses the range of the signal. It compresses the dynamic range of the signal. And because it compresses the range of the signal, making it within a region closer to the mean of the signal, when it passes through a nonlinear distortion in the channel behaves as if a nonlinear distorted signal, nonlinear channel characteristics. Around that point, you can model it as a piecewise linear region. Let's say you have a nonlinear distortion. Around a certain point, it can be modeled as piecewise linear. So not much distortion has taken place when it has passed through the channel. Expander compensates the characteristics of the compressor. So a nonlinear signal processor, expander is a nonlinear signal processor which has a transfer characteristics that just complements the compressor, such that if the transfer characteristics of the compressor is T xt, T expander, if the compressed signal passes through expander, it gives you the original signal as desired, or a scaled version of the original signal as desired. Okay, so it just does the opposite thing. Lower signal levels it does lesser, higher signal levels it does more amplification, and henceforth gives you the original signal back. However, these things are challenging to design. Anyway, but that has been very successfully implemented in many of the practical communication systems. Okay, we'll discuss about pulses in communication systems. Apparently seems very easy. There are various signals used in communication systems. For example, impulse. Ideally, we don't. Ideally, impulse is a very important signal used to analyze the system, linear time independent system, and practically hardly we ever used impulse. Another ideal signal is a step, which has a frequency characteristics extending up till infinity, spectral characteristics. However, in practice, we do not use such a signal. But pulse is one such signal which we quite often used in communication systems. For example, in pulse cone modulation, pulse amplitude modulation, or a pulse with modulated RF signal. So basically, it's a pulse in the within that pulse you have a RF signal, carrier signal modulated. So pulse is one of the very basic signal used in communication systems. A traditional pulse, rectangular pulse, which is defined from minus tau by 2 to tau by 2. Let's say the value is 1, and beyond that, for t less than minus tau by 2 or t greater than tau by 2, it's 0. So ideal pulse. So let's say amplitude is A, and this is the symbol which you use for pulse, t by tau notation. The Fourier transform of that is VF, is a tau. Sinc function f tau, you're familiar with this. Sinc function is sinc of f tau is sine pi f tau divided by pi f tau. Sin x by x tau. So what is the spectral roll-off? How does this characteristics fall or decay with respect to frequency? It decays as 1 over f. You see over here, this magnitude of this is restricted by magnitude of a tau, magnitude of sinc function, which decays as 1 over f. So spectral roll-off, this is known as how the side lobes, other than the main lobes, how does the frequency, higher frequency portion of the rectangular pulse decays as 1 over f. The next modification of a pulse, which is triangular pulse, you convolve two rectangular pulse, you obtain a triangle convolution, again, which can be defined for over minus tau to tau reaches a peak at t equal to 0 and a 1 minus mod t by tau for mod t less than tau. Beyond that, it is 0. Fourier transform of that is to convolution of two rectangular pulse in time domain gives a triangular pulse, convolution in frequency domain translates to multiplication. So you have multiplication of sinc a tau, sinc square f tau. Sinc square means sine square magnitude is bounded by 1, so h square divided by h square. So for the same area as a rectangular pulse, you see here rectangular pulse has a area. For the case of rectangular pulse, the area amplitude is a, pulse duration is minus tau by 2 to plus tau by 2, so it is a tau is the total area. Triangular pulse amplitude is at t equal to 0, maximum amplitude is a at t equal to 0. The duration, however, is spread, so minus tau to plus tau. So half a times 2 tau, so a tau. So for the same area as rectangular pulse, this to a same area, but the spectrum roll-off is, here it is 1 by f, here it is 1 by f square. So it has a better spectral characteristics. Now we come to the most important pulse, and there are even developments over and above this. So one of the very basic pulse which is used in communication system is known as a raised cosine pulse. Okay, so raised cosine pulse, the time domain representation of the pulse is given as a by 2 1 plus cos pi t by 2, and then this is a symbol for rectangular pulse over the duration 2 tau. So rectangular pulse t by 2 tau. So that means it is spread over minus tau to plus tau. You see the picture we have drawn here. And at the magnitude is at t equal to 0. It's maximum. So we have a. At t equal to minus tau, we have cos pi t by tau. So plus minus tau, it is minus 1. And henceforth the amplitude is 0. So from 0 reaches a and this thing. At t equal to tau by 2, so we have cos pi by 2, so it's 0, so we have a by 2. The amplitude is just half from at minus tau by 2 and plus tau by 2. So its shape looks something like this. Note that it's very similar to a triangular pulse. Triangular pulse would have been a linear rising, but this is a raised cosine. Cosine is there and raised because 1 plus, as if the cosine is raised up. Now this is the derivation, I'll leave it to you. This is a part of the assignment, I will discuss the assignment later. Calculate the Fourier transform of this raised cosine pulse. I have written the final expression. So what you can do is take the derivative, second derivative, find out the relation between them, and from there very easily derive Vf. So frequency Fourier transform of this Vt, Vf is given by a tau sinc 2f tau divided by 1 minus 2f tau whole square. So magnitude of that is bounded by, so from sinc we have the magnitude is bounded by 1 over f, and from here for large frequency you can neglect 1 and you have f squared. So roll off spectrum as a third order roll off. Spectrum decreases as proportional to f to the power minus 3 compared to f to the power minus 2 for a triangular pulse. Okay, you see the frequency spectrum would look something like this. So maximum at t equal to tau, at t equal to 0, a tau. At 1 over 2 tau, it reaches a tau by 2. There are nulls at 1 over tau, just like sinc function. However, the magnitude you see decays as eta by 1 over f cube. This roll off. This is known as roll off. So because it has a third order roll off, its spectral characteristics behavior is much better than the first two, and henceforth this is one of the commonly used pulses in a communication system. It is to be noted that there are other variants of these root raised cosine pulse and so on and so forth. We'll not go into those details in this discussion. Let's study something known as bandwidth. What do you mean by bandwidth of these pulses? So we'll study something known as effective bandwidth. Let's see what is effective bandwidth. Effective bandwidth is typically defined the effective bandwidth of a low pass system with respect to a low pass system. If I have a transfer function HF, low pass transfer function, so bandwidth, effective bandwidth is defined from integration minus infinity to infinity mod HF dF, integrate over the whole transfer function, normalized by 2 H naught, value at f equal to 0. Now this definition can be extended to a band pass system by replacing H naught by the center frequency Fc. Similarly, the effective duration of an impulse response minus infinity to infinity ht dt, normalized with respect to maximum value of ht. So these are one such definition of effective bandwidth and effective duration of an impulse response. However, there are certain other definitions which people have used over time. So consider a rectangular pulse of pulse width t, for example the previous case minus t by 2 to plus t by 2, energy contained. So we define the bandwidth, for example, as the energy contained within, let's say, minus w to w if it is radian per second, or minus b to plus b, it's in hertz, is denoted the energy content within this band, the ratio of the energy content within this band to the total energy. That if the total energy is Eg, the ratio of the energy content within this band is EW, then EW by Eg is one such characteristics in which we define the bandwidth. For example, I may say that I define my bandwidth such that within my bandwidth 90% of the total energy is contained. So let's see for a rectangular pulse what do we have. So if we choose this W equal to 2 pi by capital T, T is my pulse width, or if it is bandwidth, bandwidth is 1 over capital T in hertz, then we find that EW by EG, again it's left for you to derive, comes out to be 90.28%, close to 90% criteria. So we say that is the essential bandwidth of a rectangular pulse. Essential bandwidth of a rectangular pulse or pulse with T is 1 over T. But based on the criteria, that energy, total energy content within that band is at least 90%. In other requirements, other stringent requirements, it may be, in other requirements, it may be even more stringent. So correspondingly, you will have an essential bandwidth which is much greater than 1 over T. So the thing that is left for you to calculate is for the raised cosine pulse. For the raised cosine pulse of the same pulse duration, calculate what is the effective essential bandwidth. So that is left to you for the performing that experiment. Okay. Now again, another important aspects in the context of bandwidth is the bandwidth requirement for pulse transmission. So in many cases we are interested in transmission of the pulse. So consider this scenario that we have an ideal low pass filter brick wall response minus B to B. Again, ideal low pass filter is a not very practical to implement, so the conclusions drawn here may be different or little bit non-realistic compared to the actual implementation of a low pass filter, but it gives an idea. So ideal impulse response minus B to B, so we have brick wall characteristics. The impulse response turns out to be 2B sync 2BT. So this is my impulse response. You just take the inverse Fourier transform of the ideal low pass filter. Note that the impulse is non-causal. That's what we said, that it's not practical. So given an input xt, which is a step function, let's say ideal step function passing through an ideal low pass filter. Let's see what we have. Again, this portion is left for you to derive as a part of the assignment. Yt calculate what is the yt. It turns out, so basically this convert with this, we have half plus 1 by pi sine integral 2 pi bt. This sine integral is defined as sine theta, sine integral function, which is defined as, for example, sine si theta is defined as integration 0 to theta sine alpha by alpha d alpha. This is a sine integral function which you have encountered in probably other areas, for example, in physics, optics. Fresnel integral, it's known in different names actually. The standard integral, it has it does not have an analytical solution, but there are certain approximations to it. So we define a rise time concept. Like you are familiar with this from network theory. Rise time defined from, let's say, 10% to 90%. Okay? So the step function, when it passes through a low pass filter, ideal step function, rise time is instant, 0. So when it passes through a low pass filter, the step function would slowly rise from the maximum value, let's say, up till its maximum value. So we consider the rise time from the time when it has reached 10% of its maximum value to 90% of its maximum value. You can have a different definition for rise time, 5% to 95%, or so on and so forth. So you can find out, you can solve for this and find out when it has reached from 10%, when it has 90%, find out. It turns out to be 0.44 by B. Okay, B is my bandwidth of my low pass filter. Okay, so TR is, we often use this expression, TR is approximately equal to 0.5 by B or half B, 1 by 2B. So technically speaking, it is 0.44 by B. So rise time is dependent on the bandwidth of the bandwidth requirements for pulse transmission. So the channel which has a bandwidth B, the corresponding rise time of the step function is restricted by its bandwidth. The larger the bandwidth, smaller is the rise time. Or in other words, you can have just the opposite scenario. What should be the bandwidth requirement such that a pulse of particular rise time, I do not want the rise time to fall below certain minimum value. So what is the bandwidth requirement? So the bandwidth is greater than equal to 1 by 2 TR mean. So considering all the pulses, the lowest rise time pulse, my bandwidth should be at least greater than equal to 1 by 2 times that rise time. Good. Consider now pulse. Ideal pulse is ut minus tau. When it passes through a system of an ideal low pass filter with this impulse response, output becomes 1 over pi, the sine integral 2 pi bt minus sine integral 2 pi b t minus tau. I mean, you can basically find directly from here. Anyway, so again, the criteria now is, so we'll see in results in a few of the graphs below, that if B is greater than equal to 1 by 2 tau min is my minimum width of my pulse, then I have barely a detection of a pulse. If B is greater than 1 by tau min, then I have a good reproduction of the actual pulse shape. That in many cases, I need to just detect the presence of a pulse in a noisy scenario. So that says, okay, I got a 1. So in that case, my bandwidth requirement is less. It's barely 1 by 2 tau. For the case of, in many cases, when the actual pulse shape is important, it carries information, pulse position is important, pulse amplitude is important, and so on and so forth. So we in that case, we have B is greater than equal to 1 by tau. You need a larger, almost 2 times more bandwidth requirement. Note that this is very similar to what we have. B is 1 by T, which has the energy criteria of, T is my pulse width, energy criteria of at least 90%. Again, these are all for ideal pulse, ideal rectangular pulse, ideal filter. All these things from a practical perspective will be part of your assignment. Practical filter, Butterworth, let's say, or Chebyshev, a raised cosine pulse. We'll try to understand what are the choices of these figures look. The assignment portion we'll discuss a little later. Let's see a few examples. Here we have the ideal pulse. Minus tau by 2 to tau by 2. We have ideal pulse. Its frequency response looks like this. Hmm? So sinc function. The one that we had discussed, energy within the band by energy, total energy content. If we plot with respect to Bt, when Bt is equal to 1, that means bandwidth is 1 over T. So you see, is this one value, if you go straight here, it is just crossing 0.9, 90%. A larger value of Bt means slowly you have larger energy content. So if you say 95%, from this graph you can generate what is the corresponding value of bandwidth required for that particular pulse. What is the bandwidth of that particular pulse, such that energy is effective bandwidth of the pulse, energy content is 95% of the total energy. So this is the graph which gives us some understanding of how the energy is distributed over various choice of bandwidth. So this replica we would like to generate for the case of raised cosine pulse. This this graph is for ideal pulse. Okay. You see, in next figure we have two very important things. One is pulse response of an ideal low pass filter, and the other is pulse resolution of an ideal low pass filter. Okay. So what do we have? So again, that ideal pulse ut minus tau is passed through an ideal low pass filter, brick wall response. You see how the pulse looks. So for the choice of when my choice of the low pass filter B is uh, very less, this is 1 over 4 tau, the pulse is barely distinguishable, like this, as if a straight line. B is 1 over 2 tau, that means I can distinguish or detect a pulse is present. You see, it's like this. So this is B tau is half, is one criteria which we said for the pulse to be detected. B tau is 2, you see the pulse is very nice shape, that means bandwidth is 2 by tau, much larger than the minimum required. Pulse is very nicely shaped, well shaped. I can see the rise time and various things, the mean amplitude level, everything is fine. When beta is, which we said beta is 1, that means the bandwidth is 1 over tau. We want to see again how it looks. It should lie like this, and that is it will actually touch this line. It will just touch this line. So we say that the pulse, that's what we said, like when we want to reproduce, recall what our discussions before, when we want to reproduce the actual pulse or the shape of the pulse, the amplitude and various things, then beta 1 is equal to 1 or greater than 1 is one such criteria. The bandwidth has to be a little larger, compared to the case when we want to just detect the presence of a pulse. Understood? Okay. So now, for the case of beta equal to half, if the pulse is, if you have two pulses, one, another spacing 0, 1. Let's say a digital signal 101. When it passes through a low pass filter, what do we have? We have an ideal low pass filter with the choice of where we want to barely detect a pulse. You see, it looks like this. For a single pulse, it would look like this, and the center, the maximum would have been at the center. Now, presence of two pulses, even though they are separated by another pulse width, which is tau, you see, the peak has moved here to the left for the left pulse, and the peak has moved right for the second pulse. So, the reason being, the choice of the bandwidth being small leads to inter-symbol interference. The energy from this time zone has shifted there, energy from this time zone has shifted here, so they kind of interfere with each other. The pulse position, for example, if you want to use a pulse position modulation scheme where to modulate or send information, if the pulse for a single pulse it should have been there, but here you see the position would be shifted. That's why we say that for applications where this pulse reproducing the exact characteristics of the pulse is important, The choice of the bandwidth is B is 1 by 2 tau is probably not very decent. You have to go to larger bandwidth, at least probably B equal to 1 over tau. So again, these things you need to reproduce in your assignments, assignment that we will discuss. So the idea is how study of this bandwidth, pulse, race cosine pulse, and intersymbol interference, all these characteristics we want to understand from a more practical perspective. These are all for the ideal cases. Thank you very much. In the next lecture, we'll discuss about certain signal processing techniques like correlation, spectral density, review of signal systems. Thank you.